Podcasting is super popular right now, and there are a lot of really good ones out there. Has it gotten you thinking whether or not you should start a podcast? Well, my good friend Stacey Harris is here with me again. She is a repeat guest. She always has the best info, and she is sharing with us the 3 myths about launching a podcast. And I kind of have a feeling that this one will help you make the decision and probably help you take that leap to starting your very own podcast. Episode 172 starts right now. Hey there, welcome to the Lora Shipman Show. We hang out here weekly to talk about things like social media, entrepreneurship, marketing, tools, strategies, tips, and it all starts right now. Hey there, before we get started with this show, I just want to share my passion with you. I love teaching people just like you how to master social media for business, breaking it down into easy to consume and easy to execute steps so that you can see immediate results. So whether you want to start a social media consultancy or grow your brand's presence on social media, I can help. I can help you get started and master all the things that you need to know. So I want you to go over to my website. It is filled with resources, tools, tips, and courses. Visit lorashipman.com. That's LORA shipman.com to get all the goods. Now, you ready for the show? I know I am. Let's get started. Hey, everybody. Welcome back. I am so excited because I have my friend Stacey Harris here. She's a repeat guest on the show, which is awesome. And she is just, you guys are going to walk away from this episode with a ton of information in your head. And I'm excited to get started. Stacey, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me again. I feel very honored to get to, I performed well enough the first time that I get another run at it.
No, you have. I just love your business. I love your accounts on social and everything because you always provide such great value. And your business is called Uncommonly More. So tell people a little bit about you and a little bit about the business in case they haven't heard your other episode here.
So I'm the Stacey Harris. I'm the CEO of a digital marketing agency called Uncommonly More. And essentially we do uncommonly more. So generally speaking, when you hire a marketing partner or a podcast producer or a social media manager, in which we do all of those things, you sort of just get your tasks checked off. Mm-hmm. We approach everything strategy first. And so we really, truly partner with our clients so that we make sure everything we're doing does this crazy thing where it actually delivers results.
That's huge.
Which is not necessarily always what we're going for. But that's for another episode. And so that's what we do is we really partner with our clients. So we sort of think of ourselves as a contract marketing department. So for solopreneurs or micro businesses, where having a full-on marketing department isn't really financially an option. I know certainly it isn't for me to have an entire full-out corporate marketing team. We partner with them to give them strategy, what will actually get results, and then execution of those plans. So all of our clients start strategy first, whether they come in through email or social management, or what we're going to talk today, our podcast production stuff. We always start with great. And we talked about this a little bit before we started. Mm-hmm. Why do you want to do this? What purpose does this serve in your business? And I'm sure we'll talk more about that today, but that's kind of what we do. And it's been really fun. I think the last time I was on, we were really just getting started with expanding the team.
Okay.
And now we're at 4 people. We've got, project managers and digital marketing assistants and podcast editors. And it's been a lot of fun to watch it grow over these last couple of years.
How fun. Yeah, that is. I love watching businesses grow and change and pivot and do all the things they need to do. It's so, for me, it's exciting. It's the geek of me that I love.
I agree. The evolution is something I don't think we talk enough about.
Right. Yeah. Because people will see you all of a sudden hitting all this success and they never see those early years or those early days of you getting to where you are today. They only see you in the here and now.
It's one of my favorite, I can't think of the name of the musician, but there was a lot of talk several years ago about her being an overnight success. And she's like, yeah, 10 years of singing in really gross bars. I am an overnight success. No one sees the first part where you were trying to get successful.
You're so right. It's so true. It's so true. Well, I'm excited about today's episode because you're going to take us through the 3 myths about launching a podcast. And I think this is really timely because, especially at the time of this recording, where we are with the COVID-19 and everything going on, we were just talking about this. People have more time on their hands and they're getting more creative and they're starting to do new things for themselves in their business or starting that side hustle that they've kind of put, on the back burner. And now that we have the time to do this, I'm excited that you're going to take us through and debunk those myths.
I'm really excited about this too. And I want to hop in on the first one because I think it's something you and I are going to agree on. I think we'll agree on all of them, but I think this is one that you and I are really going to agree on. It's this idea that if I start a show, my business will immediately be known by everyone and super successful. Mm-hmm. I just need to record and put out these episodes. End of list. And then suddenly there will just be people knocking down my door. And I think we hear a lot of people who are selling courses on how to launch your podcast, really teaching that this is the solution to all of your business problems. But podcast, like any other kind of content, video or blog, takes strategy, takes preparation, and most importantly, takes marketing. Yes. I always encourage our clients to think about launching a podcast like they would think about launching a program, like they thought about launching their business. It's going to take more time than any of us want to acknowledge for it to really get traction, for it to really have an impact. And I think one thing we don't talk about enough is it's really easy for us to think a month in or 5 years in which check, I've been in both places, and go, I don't even think this is working. And then you get an email from somebody who's been silently listening.
Yes.
And says, like, regurgitates your own stuff back to you. And you're like, they are listening.
That is the funniest. It's an amazing feeling because you do. With podcasting, I think you're talking into a mic and it's almost like on this side of the mic, you're talking into a black abyss. Like you don't know who you're talking to. And you're just hoping that somebody is tuning in. And the analytics on podcasting is a little bit of the wild, wild west right now. Like you can't get a lot of good numbers or concrete numbers. And so it's hard to tell how well you're doing.
Yeah. And I think so often in the online to business space specifically, we have a lack of realistic expectations, similarly to what we were talking about. Like suddenly we find somebody who's got a mazillion Instagram followers and 1 million downloads. And we're just like, oh, so I just need to start a podcast and I'll have those things too. And I'm like, no, look at how often they're marketing their show. Look at how often they're promoting their show. And here's the deal. What I really want you to look at is how are they getting business from the show? So actually listening to where in the show they're next stepping you to services, they're next stepping you to a program. How often are they in their emails promoting an episode, tying that in with the thing you can buy, with your next steps? Because even if you do out of the gates, take off, magic happens, and you suddenly have 1 million downloads. If you're not stepping them into an offer, a course, a program, a service, whatever it is that you're selling, your podcast is not actually helping your business because they're two things aren't connected. If I started a podcast tomorrow about how much I love Schitt's Creek, which my love for Schitt's Creek is deep, it is real, and it is like unchangeable. It's not so going to help me sell marketing strategy half-day intensives because the two things are unrelated. And so podcasts aren't quite the magic pill that, again, mostly people who are selling podcast launch courses are telling us maybe it is. It is an absolutely powerful way to up-level your business, to market your services, to connect with your audience. I have done incredible things in my business through podcasting. I've also been podcasting for 480 some episodes and 6 years.
It's a long time. Yeah.
It's a really long time. And I promise I really just say the same 7 things over and over again for 480 episodes. But I find new and inventive ways to say them. And so that's the first myth I want to talk about. And that really pulls into our second myth, which is I don't really care about new and noteworthy. I think there's a big myth around the fact that new and noteworthy is a must, is the ultimate goal, the ultimate sign of success for your podcast in those first early days. And I want to speak to a couple of things. And I dig deep into this on a podcast I did on my show about that's literally called I Don't Care About Noteworthy. So if you want to hear me rant on this a lot, dig into that. It's a good solid 15 minutes of me being I don't care. And I do talk about what I care about instead. It's not all negative. But I think so often we're told it's required, it's a must, you have to achieve that. But there's no real clear outline over how to get in new and noteworthy. There's been a lot of talk that it's the first 8 weeks of your show. That's actually not totally true. There's a lot of shows who are 6 and 8 months in who have ended up in new and noteworthy. And so it's really hard to set a goal of something when you don't actually know the parameters of being selected for it.
I was just going to ask you, I was like scribbling that down. So do you know if there are any algorithm hits that you need to meet in order to hit the new and noteworthy section?
They've never been transparent, much like Facebook and its algorithm, transparent in any way about what works. Sort of the general schools of thought is, yes, it's roughly your first 8 weeks. That's not make or break, but generally speaking, you're in that first couple of months of your show. And more often than not, the school of thought is it's download numbers and early reviews, ideally positive, let's just say. Right. And so getting those early reviews is really important, and getting those early downloads, which is why when we launch podcasts, I always recommend our clients have a couple of episodes where they can get a lot of sort of, think of Netflix, that binge effect, right? You can get moving people from one episode to the next. It's also a really great way to inflate your download numbers in a really ethical way, obviously. But as you spoke to earlier, the stats for podcasting have not quite grown at the same. It's kind of like batteries in our cell phones. The technology has advanced. The support of it, not so much.
That's a good way to put it. Oh my gosh.
We're using like 25-year-old battery technology in our iPhones that are basically, a rocket ship in our pocket. And so podcasting stats are kind of the same. We've seen podcasts really take off, but we've not really seen any solid advancement in stats. Downloads are kind of what we've got. And so it's nice to be able to kind of use that to say, hey, I want to make sure we get some early downloads. When a person goes and subscribes, it's going to download what's there in those early episodes where there's just a few. And even later in a show, you'll notice that it'll sort of auto download, especially like Apple Podcasts, those first 3 or those sort of the 3 most recent episodes. And so having a couple of episodes there when you first launch can kind of help up those download numbers, which again, the school of thought will help new and noteworthy. And so we always make sure we have those in place, because certainly I'm not going to be mad if we hit new and noteworthy.
Yeah.
But I'll be honest, I hit new and noteworthy 6 years ago. Didn't actually change my life in any way.
Yeah, it's like
there wasn't a parade.
Right. It was a nice to have. It was nice to say that you hit that. So I have a question about Apple Podcasts. And I don't know if you'll know this or not, but you know how when you're on that Apple Podcast app, it'll have a listen now option instead of the download option. Does that listen now count as a download, even though it's not physically downloaded?
Yeah, I have not seen any confirmation of that from Apple, but the school of sort of the generally accepted school of thought is that it does, because even though it doesn't physically download to your phone,
right,
that feed is being accessed.
Right. That's what I wonder.
Well,
and
it's
I
kind
always,
of like a play.
Yeah, exactly. And I always feel guilty because I'm one of those people, I don't download the episodes on my phone for the most part. I always do that listen now, because for me, it's like, I don't want to use up all that space on my phone to download those episodes. However, I don't want the person not to get the credit for me listening. So I was always curious about that.
No, it still counts. Similarly to if you're hosted through Libsyn or whatever, and you have that embedded player on your website and someone hits play, that also counts, because the feed is being accessed.
Okay.
So it's actually pulling it to sort of a temporary place where it's streaming to you, because it is downloading it in a way, because it's
in a sense
giving you access to it. It's just not saving itself to your device.
Okay. All right. I was always curious about that. So sorry to go down that rabbit trail.
Always good.
No,
Always good. And so that's sort of the second big myth is this idea that it's a requirement when you launch. What I'd rather you be looking at is, are your downloads growing at a regular pace? And really above anything else, like, are they not falling off? Like if you're going pretty well on those download numbers and then they like just cliff on you and you're like, wait, where did everyone go? That's a red flag. And I'd much rather you look at that than be obsessively checking Apple Podcasts to see if you're a new and noteworthy. Because here's the other thing. Not the only podcast player on the planet. I have a lot of people who actively avoid, and I'm talking about Apple users, like straight up Apple obsessed, who are not using Apple Podcasts to listen to their podcast. So be checking your Spotify numbers, be checking your Stitcher numbers, be checking your downloads on the whole, and not so much in just this one player. Don't tell Apple I said that, because I love them very much and I don't want them to be mad at me.
Agreed. But that's a good point though. And people access their content in different ways. And I think that's such a very fair point, is go and look at everything. Don't look at one part of the pie. For sure.
Yeah.
Cool.
The third myth. Oh, go ahead.
Before you go there, I have a question about new and noteworthy. Do you get notification that you've hit there, or do you have to constantly check it?
You have to check.
So you could potentially like hit it and never even know about it.
Especially because, again, they're super vague. There's no real, like, it gets refreshed, it gets refreshed every 24 hours, or it's refreshed every There were times, because I was absolutely one of those people that I'm telling you not to be, who obsessively refreshed over and over and over again for like the first 8 weeks of my show being around. And there would be times where I was like third on new and noteworthy, and then I wasn't on it at all. And then I was third again in the course of an hour and a half.
Wow.
Which is a real roller coaster for the ego.
It is.
Which is part of the reason I don't want you to put so much weight in it. Because it doesn't actually mean anything. But yeah, no, there's no clarity around how often it's updated, and there's no notification if you're there. So you could absolutely have been killing it, just in none of the times you checked.
Yep. I once got an email from somebody who said, you just hit new and noteworthy, and we would like to do blah, 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 blah for you. It's probably some podcast editing or whatever. I'm like, really? I hit new and noteworthy? I didn't know. And so I went there and I couldn't find it. I'm like, well, they must be pulling my chain or something like that. So I have no idea if I hit it or not.
I would say you probably did hit it, because generally speaking, those kind of cold emails, they are people who are constantly monitoring that, looking up the contact information and making those cold pitches.
Interesting.
And so you probably did for a window of time. It just wasn't there when you got there. I'm also not, so this is complete theory and in no one way fact. Like, let me just start with that. I want to know how frequently we're fed different new and noteworthies.
Interesting.
Like if you hop on TikTok right now and I hop in my For You page, my For You page and your For You page would look different.
Completely
if we hop on Instagram, and even if we followed all the same people, your feed and my feed would look different. Same with Facebook. Same with YouTube. And so I am curious if everybody gets the same new and noteworthy. I don't know. I can't speak to whether that's true or not. But I am curious how much that algorithm is edited or customized for the person consuming it. Because I'll be honest, my new and noteworthy often consists of a lot of business podcasts.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine that in all of the entertainment podcasts that come out, these are the new and noteworthy ones.
I agree. You know what? That makes perfect sense. Knowing how things operate in the algorithm world, that makes total sense. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay, number 3, what did you have for that one?
So our third myth is that you need to already have a massive audience to successfully enter podcasting. I think so often, and I honestly take this myth and apply it to literally every part of your business and life.
Yeah.
I think it just feeds our not enoughness. Because short tangent of a story. I retired my husband from his job in 2015, and we started talking about it in 2013, because in 2013, I started my business in 2011. By 2013, I had matched his income.
Wow.
Which is great. Very exciting. Woohoo, go me. We spent the next 2 years going, okay, when we have this amount of money in the bank, or when I make this amount of revenue, then we'll do it. And we would move this number every 6 months. And so finally we were like, we're just going to put a date on the calendar and we're going to commit to it no matter how scary it feels or what's in the bank. And we finally just did it. And that was the only way it was ever going to happen. And I think the same is true when you go to launch your podcast. So often we want to say, okay, when I have X amount of followers on Instagram, or this many people on my email list, or this many sales of my product, or whatever it is, then I'll launch a show, because I need to have an audience to launch the show to. And that's not actually totally true. In fact, launching a podcast is a really powerful way to grow your audience. I'm of the belief that launching anything is a really powerful way to grow your audience, because anytime we put focused energy in talking to and serving our audience about the thing we do, suddenly our audience grows. And you want to know why? It's because we're not putting out filler content. It's because we're not putting out stuff because we're checking the content box. We're very strategically saying, hey, here's how I'm valuable. And that's attractive in an internet full of noise. Somebody saying, here's how I'm valuable and helpful to you is incredibly magical, right? And so I think what I want to really end with is this idea that start the show now. Yes, that may mean that day one you get 12 downloads and you put out 3 episodes. And so it's like your mom, your dad, your dog, and your uncle. Like, cool. It doesn't matter. It will grow from there, but it won't grow if you never do it. And here's the deal. I launched my show with a fairly small audience. Thank heavens, because if I listen to those early episodes, they are terrible. I'm so glad the audience I have now didn't hear all of those episodes. They were bad, but I had to get through them.
Me too.
Get good episodes.
Yep, me too. It's funny you should say that, because I don't know how many people know this or not, but when I first started podcasting, I didn't really know how to work my mic, and I didn't know the different settings on my mic, and I was getting this like echo and all this crap going on that I hated. I was literally in Florida during the summer recording my podcast underneath a towel so I could muffle the sound, so I could get rid of like whatever echo was going on. And it was hot and sweaty and it was terrible. But just like you, like my first couple of podcasts, like they were terrible. Don't go back and listen. Please don't.
Please don't. Please don't. For us, just don't.
Yeah.
But what's so funny is I find that the more episodes I do, the higher that number gets where I'm willing to cut off how far people should go back. Like when I hit 50, I was like, don't go listen to the first 25. When I hit 100, I was like, don't go listen to the first 50. When I hit 200, I was like, don't go listen to the first. Now we're at like, we'll hit 500 later this year. And I'm like, you don't need to really hear anything before 400.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
It's fine.
It's so funny.
They're not important.
No, it's so funny.
I've touched on that same content later. You're good.
Yeah, you're good. You'll hear it. Yeah, you'll get it. Here's what I love about not starting with a big audience is you're going to develop new audience members just for them doing the podcast itself. So I like to think that you end up getting a more diversified audience the more channels you have. So you've got like Instagram coming in over here, YouTube over here, a podcast. All of those people found you from different places. So it's just one more avenue to build an audience, which I love.
I agree. And I think it's really important when we think about, and I think we have such a great reminder of that every time any of the networks make an algorithm change, right? How important it is that we are diversifying. You know, we talk a lot about this from like a business perspective, like diversifying where your revenue is coming from, you know, making sure you don't have one client who's like 80% of your revenue. Because if they fall off and something happens, you are up a real big creek, right? The same thing is true of our marketing channels. We want to be hitting them on email, on social, on podcasts, on a, I always say at least 2 social channels. Because again, if something happens to one, we've got another. By the way, those 2 channels cannot be Facebook and Instagram.
Right.
They're both owned by Facebook.
Yeah.
But we want to make sure we have a couple of options. It doesn't mean you need to be everywhere day one. Be in a couple of places day one, get comfortable there and expand. But it's also why, and I think this is something that's not done enough, when you're launching your podcast, I don't want you to just submit to Apple Podcasts. I want you to submit that feed to everybody because it takes absolutely zero more work on your part moving forward.
Right.
It's just the submitting the feed, which honestly takes like a solid 45 minutes and then you're done.
Right. Exactly.
And then submit it everywhere. That way, no matter how people listen, I think Android users so often get left out because everyone cares about Apple Podcasts. And I'm like, like a lot of people don't own iPhones.
That's right. That's right.
I mean, I do. A lot of people also do, but even iPhone users, I know a ton of iPhone users who are like, no, I'm not going anywhere near Apple Podcasts, because when Apple Podcasts was still rolled into iTunes and when it was early in its development, it was quite terrible, guys.
Mm-hmm.
Real bad.
Mm-hmm.
real bad. And honestly, it's not the most aesthetically wonderful one of all of the options now, if I'm honest. To be fair, it is where I still listen to all of my podcasts because it's built in and it's synced to all the places. It's just easy. I'm too deep, basically, is what I'm saying. But Spotify does a great job. Stitcher does a great job. I'm curious to see what happens with Stitcher now that it looks like SiriusXM is going to gobble them up. So I'm curious to see what happens there. But pay attention to all of these places because you're exactly right. You never know where somebody's going to come in from.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a question about when we started this episode, we were talking about why you should even have a podcast, or people not knowing the reason why. Do you have some good reasons why you think people should consider starting a podcast? Like, what would be the benefits from it?
So for me, I always really look at how does your potential client consume content. Mm-hmm. For me, I have found my potential clients want to be able to consume content while they're walking the dog, exercising, as part of their morning process while they're getting their coffee. And they tend to consume in a sort of bypassed way, in a secondary way. Mm-hmm. They're not very often sitting down and reading a blog post, and they're even less sitting down and watching a series of videos. Mm-hmm. And so for me, it makes total sense to be speaking to them in this way. Now, I want to acknowledge that part of that is because I've had a podcast for 6 years. And so I've attracted podcast listeners. But even early in my business, it was the easiest way for them to consume my content. The other piece that I think we don't acknowledge enough is the selfishness of it. I hate writing. I think I talked about this on the last episode, but I have a much bigger filter between my brain and my fingers typing or writing than I do my brain and my mouth. For better or worse, the brain to mouth filter is non-existent, which allows me to sound a little more human, connect in a more real way than an overly edited blog post does. So even when I do blog posts, I tend to write that, speak them. And then somebody on my team will take the transcript and turn them into something that, because they don't speak like people should write.
Right, exactly.
Turns it into something readable. And so for me, that was a big, big, big part of my early why for podcasting was it takes me 2 weeks to get a blog post out that I hate and that barely works. I can batch 4 podcasts in a day. Yep. A couple of weeks ago, we did it on Instagram. We did 3 podcasts in 90 minutes because I needed to get them done so that my team could edit them. Wow. And I can't do that writing. And so if speaking feels more connected for you, feels more real, and to use a buzzword that is a buzzword because it works, authentic to you, is easier for you to take what's in your head and get it out to your people, then go for it.
Do it. Yeah.
But on the flip side of that, if that terrifies you and freezes you up and feels impossible, look at other ways to approach it. I have clients who completely write their podcasts before, and they don't necessarily read that as a script, but they have to mentally put their ideas together before they can hop on the mic. If I do that, I am so unbelievably in my head about not missing a the.
Oh, really?
That I am completely robotic and no fun at all. So I do 3 bullet points. I've got my iPad here. I just go, okay, this is the title that we're working with right now. Here are the 3 bullet points. And I riff for 20 minutes. And 7 out of 10 times we come out with a pretty solid, funny episode, and it works and it's valuable, right?
That's good.
Sometimes I go, this was terrible, and we have to re-record it because in the middle there was a butterfly or something, and I was like, hello.
Yeah.
So it's not a perfect system, okay? But I think so often we forget that selfish part. Again, we go back to this idea of my coach told me, or my friend has a podcast and they saw so much success. So I guess that's what I have to do too. That's not a reason. Look at how you best provide value and go from there.
I think that's really good advice. That's awesome. So do you have something for our audience? You do? You have a
present for you guys.
Awesome. What is that present, Stacey?
If you go to uncommonlymore.com/launch your podcast, you will find a 5-day training walking you through launching your podcast. Spoiler alert, day 1, all about why you want to start a podcast.
Good.
And who's going to listen. Because really, we make all of the decisions after that based on the answer to those 2 questions. Why and who. Like, this is basic, like, what did we learn that in, like, 3rd grade English? Like, who, what, where, how, when. These are the things we need to know. And so we actually walk through in the 5 days, and we talk tech and what you actually need to get started, which is very often less than you think. Don't let anyone tell you you need to go buy thousands of dollars in equipment to start a show. You don't. I started my show with a $60 mic, a $10 table stand, and free software.
There you go.
That was it. And it worked, guys. That was actually the first 300 episodes of my show. And the first, I think, couple 100,000 downloads of my show was all done for less than $100.
That's
and
amazing.
I didn't actually need the table stand. I just really got sick of setting it on books. Let's be honest. Like, just the mic was necessary. And so we walk through all of those things. And on day 5, we actually start building out your launch plan. Who we're going to approach, how we're going to launch the show. So you really walk through those 5 days and you end it, if you stay with me for all 5 days, because I know several times we start trainings, we don't finish, but stay with me because you will end the show with a checklist of everything you need. And, you know, Amazon has 2-day shipping mostly. So you could end with your gear already at your house. And a launch plan, an actual plan for what the first 2 episodes of your show are going to be, who you're going to reach out to help you launch it, who on your team, or maybe if you need to find outside of your team, is going to help you support the show, if that's right. And so it's super valuable and a great way to really test run if podcasts are right for you. Because we've had a couple of people who've gone through it and they're like, never mind, I'm tapping out. I'm like, cool. Awesome. But now you've made an informed decision about what was right for you. And it's totally free.
That's awesome. That's a great little giveaway. Thank you, Stacey. You guys are better download it. I'll put it in the show notes so you guys don't have to remember the link, but definitely go there to look for it. Stacey, this is awesome. Thank you so much for coming back. I love doing interviews with you. You always give so much great information.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. I always love stopping by here. It's a good time. So we'll have to do it again.
Okay, sounds good. Hey there. I just want to say thank you for spending time with me here today. I know your time is super valuable, which is why I am dedicated to providing lots of usable, actionable information in the shortest amount of time possible. Before you go, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a future episode. And if you have ideas or topics you would like me to cover in an upcoming show, let me know about it in the comment section provided.